April 1861. A nation tears itself apart. The American Civil War ignites, a conflict of unprecedented scale and savagery, pitting brother against brother, state against state. As the cannons roared at Fort Sumter, no one could foresee the 4 agonizing years of bloodshed, the millions of lives upended, the profound scars etched into the very soul of America. Abraham Lincoln, a man thrust into the presidency at the brink of national dissolution, faced an existential crisis. His Union, fragile and fractured, battled a formidable Confederacy. Conventional warfare alone seemed to promise only protracted slaughter. But in the smoky, frantic corridors of the War Department, amidst the clamor for more men, more weapons, more decisive victories, a different kind of war was beginning to take shape. It was a war fought not on fields of mud and blood, but in the silent, clandestine realm of information. Lincoln, ever the shrewd strategist, understood that true power lay not just in brute force, but in knowledge, in understanding the enemy's next move before they made it. The conventional tools of war were proving insufficient. The Union needed an invisible advantage, a secret weapon that could turn the tide. This weapon would not be forged in an armory, but in the minds of clever men, in the intricate dance of symbols and ciphers, in the silent hum of a revolutionary machine. The telegraph. This is the story of Lincoln's hidden hand, the untold saga of how a clandestine network of codebreakers and telegraph operators provided the Union with the critical intelligence that ultimately helped end the bloodiest conflict in American history. It was a secret weapon that transformed the very nature of warfare, and its impact echoed far beyond the battlefields of Gettysburg and Vicksburg. The war's end, so desperately sought, would not come solely through courage and sacrifice, but through an unprecedented mastery of communication and deception. This was the dawn of modern intelligence, a shadow war whose secrets remained buried for generations, waiting to be revealed. Lincoln knew, instinctively, that control of information was control of destiny. And he was determined to control the narrative of war. Before the telegraph, military communication was a slow, arduous affair. Orders traveled by horse-mounted courier, by signal flags across open fields, or by semaphore from hill to hill. Days, sometimes weeks, could pass between the issuance of an order and its reception on the front lines. This glacial pace was utterly incompatible with the swift, dynamic movements of armies in the Civil War. But a technological marvel, born just decades earlier, was poised to revolutionize everything: the electric telegraph. Patented by Samuel Morse in 1837, the telegraph transformed communication from a physical journey to an instantaneous transmission of electrical pulses. It was, in essence, America's burgeoning nervous system, rapidly connecting cities, businesses, and even homes. By 1860, a vast network of telegraph lines crisscrossed the northern states, an intricate web of copper and iron stretching for thousands of miles. This infrastructure was a critical advantage the Union possessed over the largely agrarian South. Lincoln, with his acute understanding of logistics and technology, immediately recognized the strategic potential of this network. He understood that controlling the flow of information could provide a decisive edge. A message that once took days to deliver could now arrive in minutes, sometimes seconds. This speed was revolutionary, but it came with a new, unforeseen vulnerability. As messages flashed across the wires, they were no longer private. Any operator along the line could potentially read them. And worse, enemy operators, or agents, could tap into the lines, listening in on the Union's most sensitive plans. The very speed that made the telegraph so valuable also made it a potential Achilles heel. The need for rapid communication collided head-on with the imperative for secrecy. How could one send vital military orders, troop movements, and strategic discussions across open wires without them falling into enemy hands? This dilemma would give birth to a new kind of warfare, one cloaked in secrecy and reliant on the power of the written code. The stakes were impossibly high. Misinformation or intercepted plans could lead to devastating defeats, prolonging the war and costing countless lives. The telegraph, while a boon, also created a new battleground, a silent, intellectual struggle for control over the very words that shaped the war's outcome. In the chaotic opening months of the war, Lincoln swiftly moved to consolidate control over this vital communication network. He understood that the civilian telegraph companies, though powerful, were not equipped for the demands of wartime secrecy and coordination. On February 26, 1862, by an act of Congress, the U.S. Military Telegraph Corps, or USMTC, was formally established. This wasn't merely a group of operators, it was a pioneering intelligence agency, unlike anything the world had ever seen. The USMTC was a unique blend of civilian expertise and military discipline. Young, often brilliant civilian telegraphers, mostly in their late teens and early 20s, were brought into government service. They wore no uniforms, carried no arms, yet they were at the very heart of the Union war effort, operating under the direct authority of the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton. Their primary mission was clear: to lay and maintain telegraph lines, often under fire, connecting headquarters with the battlefield. They were the unsung heroes who ensured Lincoln could communicate directly with his generals, receiving updates and issuing orders with unprecedented speed. But their role quickly expanded beyond simple transmission. Stationed in critical locations, these operators became Lincoln's eyes and ears. They overheard everything, from the casual chatter of soldiers to the hushed conversations of generals. Their fingers, trained to transcribe Morse code, were also skilled at recording every scrap of information that crossed their wires. Lincoln himself became a constant presence in the War Department Telegraph Office, a small, bustling room that became the nerve center of the Union. He spent countless hours there, often late into the night, reading messages as they arrived, sometimes even before they reached Secretary Stanton. His gaunt figure, hunched over a telegraph key, symbolized his deep personal engagement with the flow of intelligence. He would pore over dispatches, seeking patterns, understanding the subtle nuances of commanders' moods and the unfolding realities of the war. It was here, in this humble room, that the seeds of a sophisticated intelligence operation were truly sown. The USMTC wasn't just transmitting messages, it was collecting, synthesizing, and interpreting data, laying the groundwork for what would become a crucial, secret weapon. This direct access to real-time information was revolutionary, giving Lincoln an unparalleled understanding of the war's ebb and flow, far exceeding any commander-in-chief before him. It was a testament to his foresight that he recognized the strategic imperative of this new technology and moved so decisively to harness its power. As the USMTC established its network, the inherent vulnerability of telegraphic communication became glaringly apparent. Any operator along the line, even those with dubious loyalties, could potentially read a message. More critically, the Confederates, who also utilized telegraphy, quickly realized they could tap into Union lines, listening in on enemy communications. The immediate solution, both north and south, was the use of codes and ciphers. In the early days, these were rudimentary. Simple substitution ciphers were common, where each letter of the alphabet was replaced by another, or by a number. For example, A might become D, B become E, and so on. A more advanced, though still breakable, method involved using a pre-arranged codebook, often disguised as an ordinary dictionary. Specific words or phrases would be replaced by a numerical sequence or an arbitrary word that only those with the correct key could decipher. For instance, reinforcements might be coded as river, or attack at dawn as apple tree. These early codes, however, had significant weaknesses. Simple substitution ciphers were easily cracked by frequency analysis, by identifying the most common letters in the coded message and comparing them to the known frequency of letters in the English language, e.g., E is the most common letter, T the second, etc. Codebooks, while offering more security, were vulnerable to capture. If a Confederate cavalry raid seized a Union codebook, every message sent using that book instantly became an open secret. And such captures were not uncommon. Generals often carried their codebooks, making them prime targets. The early war years were a trial by fire for both sides, a desperate scramble to secure communications while simultaneously trying to penetrate the enemies. The Confederate forces, often with fewer resources, relied heavily on captured Union equipment and, crucially, captured codebooks. This gave them intermittent, but often valuable, insights into Union plans. It was a constant game of cat and mouse, where the stakes were measured in casualties and strategic advantage. Lincoln quickly grasped that these simple methods were insufficient. He recognized that the Union needed more robust, dynamic, and unbreakable codes to truly leverage the telegraph's potential without exposing its secrets. The era of sophisticated cryptography was about to begin, spurred by the urgent demands of a nation at war. While the Union was grappling with its own cryptographic vulnerabilities, the Confederacy faced even greater challenges. The industrial capacity and extensive telegraph network of the North far outstripped the South's. Confederate telegraph lines were often hastily laid, poorly maintained, and vulnerable to Union raids. Furthermore, the Confederacy suffered from a lack of centralized control over its telegraphic communications. Different departments and armies often used their own improvised codes, leading to a patchwork of security measures, many of which were easily compromised. Their reliance on rudimentary codebooks and simple substitution ciphers, similar to the Union's early attempts, meant that their messages were ripe for interception and decryption. The Union, with its burgeoning USMTC, quickly exploited these weaknesses. Union telegraph operators, trained not just to transmit but also to intercept, became expert eavesdroppers. They would tap into Confederate lines, often disguised as civilians or hidden in dense foliage, listening intently as enemy messages buzzed across the wires. When the Confederates used the same code for too long, or worse, reused numerical sequences that had been previously compromised, it became an open book for the Union's nascent intelligence apparatus. A critical tactic employed by the Union was the systematic collection of Confederate cipher keys. Sometimes these were captured during skirmishes, found on the bodies of dead couriers, or seized during raids on Confederate headquarters. Other times, Union spies embedded within Confederate territory would painstakingly acquire these crucial documents. Each captured key was a goldmine, unlocking a trove of enemy plans, troop movements, and strategic intentions. The more Confederate codes the Union could break, the more they understood the enemy's strengths, weaknesses, and next moves. This asymmetry in cryptographic capabilities became a silent but powerful advantage for the Union. While Lincoln's forces worked diligently to strengthen their own ciphers, they simultaneously built an impressive capability to exploit the Confederacy's less secure communication methods. This dual approach of offense and defense in the information war would prove pivotal. The very foundation of the Confederate war effort, its ability to coordinate and command, was being subtly undermined, message by message, decryption by decryption. The whispers on the wire were no longer just whispers. They were becoming audible, coherent voices, revealing the innermost secrets of the enemy. As the war dragged on, the need for more sophisticated Union codes became paramount. Simple substitution ciphers were like flimsy locks, easily picked. The Union required something truly robust, a system that could withstand intense scrutiny from Confederate codebreakers. This challenge fell to the bright young men of the USMTC, especially those based in the War Department. They were not just operators, they were pioneers in American cryptography, driven by the urgency of war. Their innovation was the development and widespread adoption of more complex polyalphabetic ciphers. Unlike a simple substitution cipher where A always equals D, a polyalphabetic cipher uses multiple substitution alphabets. The specific alphabet used for each letter in the plaintext would shift according to a predetermined key or keyword. Imagine a Vigenère cipher, for instance. A keyword, like Lincoln, would be used repeatedly. The first letter of the message would be encoded using the first letter of the keyword, the second with the second, and so on. This made frequency analysis, the most common method of breaking simple codes, incredibly difficult, if not impossible, without the keyword. The shift in alphabets scrambled the letter frequencies, making the ciphertext appear random. These complex systems often utilized a cipher disk or a set of pre-arranged tables to facilitate encoding and decoding. The disks, usually made of cardboard or metal, had two concentric rings of letters. By rotating the rings according to the keyword, different substitution alphabets could be quickly generated. This was a significant leap in cryptographic security. But even these methods required constant vigilance. Keywords had to be changed frequently, and the cipher systems themselves periodically updated to prevent long-term exposure. The Union also developed a sophisticated system for distributing and managing these keys, ensuring that only authorized personnel had access to them. The men crafting these codes worked in intense secrecy, their identities and methods largely unknown even to many in the Union command. They were the intellectual warriors of the conflict, fighting a battle of wits and ingenuity against an unseen enemy. Their success meant secure communication for Union generals, giving them the confidence to transmit sensitive plans knowing they would likely remain confidential. It was a race against time and intellect, a silent struggle whose outcome would have profound implications for the fate of the Union. The security of the North's strategic communications hinged on their ability to stay one step ahead, to invent and adapt faster than the Confederates could break their systems. This clandestine work was as vital to victory as any bullet or bayonet. The War Department Telegraph Office in Washington, D.C. was more than just a communication hub. It was, for Lincoln, a second home and a vital nerve center of his presidency. Situated just steps from his desk, Lincoln would often slip away from the formalities of the White House to spend hours in this unassuming room. It was here, amidst the constant click-clack of telegraph keys and the hushed voices of the young operators, that he truly connected with the unfolding realities of the war. These telegraphers, often just boys, became Lincoln's most trusted confidants and his direct link to the front lines. David Homer Bates, Albert Chandler, and Charles Tinker were among the privileged few who worked intimately with the president. They were sworn to absolute secrecy, privy to the most sensitive information flowing across the nation. Lincoln would read the incoming dispatches, sometimes still in their raw-coded form, with an almost insatiable hunger for information. He would question the operators, seeking clarification, asking for context, always eager to understand the subtle nuances of each message. He learned to read the rhythm of the telegraph, distinguishing between the urgent staccato of a battle report and the more measured tone of a logistical update. His presence was not merely symbolic, it was active and engaged. He would often dictate replies directly to the operators, crafting his messages with precision and care, understanding that every word could have profound consequences. These messages, often destined for his generals, were then encoded and dispatched, carrying the weight of presidential authority and strategic direction. The close bond between Lincoln and his telegraphers was unique. They saw him at his most vulnerable, weary, burdened, yet always resolute. They witnessed his flashes of wit and his moments of deep despair. Their loyalty was absolute, not just to the president, but to the Union they all served. This intimate relationship allowed for an unprecedented flow of information and decision-making. Lincoln wasn't waiting for summaries or filtered reports. He was immersed in the raw data, allowing him to react with remarkable speed and informed judgment. The War Department Telegraph Office, with its clattering keys and constant hum, was the engine of Lincoln's intelligence operation, a silent force shaping the destiny of a nation. While the Union was busy strengthening its own cryptographic defenses, a dedicated group of decryption wizards within the USMTC was relentlessly working to break Confederate codes. This was the offensive arm of Lincoln's secret weapon, a clandestine operation focused on turning enemy secrets into Union advantages. The work was painstaking, requiring immense patience, acute analytical skills, and a deep understanding of linguistic patterns. Unlike spies who might gather intelligence in the field, these men worked primarily with intercepted ciphertext, a jumble of seemingly random letters and numbers. They often had little context, only the raw messages flowing across the wires. Their task was to find the patterns, exploit the weaknesses, and ultimately reveal the hidden meaning. Many Confederate codes, particularly in the early years and from less disciplined units, were often simple substitution ciphers or relied on frequently reused codebooks. This made them vulnerable. If a Confederate general repeatedly used a particular word in an encrypted message, or if a standard military phrase appeared often, the decryption specialists could begin to build a lexicon, slowly piecing together the cipher key. They would look for common letter pairings, short words like the, or, and grammatical structures. The sheer volume of intercepted messages was a blessing. The more ciphertext they had, the more data points they could analyze. Cross-referencing messages from different dates and different Confederate commands often revealed overlapping patterns or reused keys, providing crucial breakthroughs. One of the most significant advantages for the Union cryptographers was the occasional capture of Confederate cipher keys or codebooks. When these fell into Union hands, the work of decryption became exponentially easier. They could then read past and future messages encrypted with that key as if they were plain text. But even without captured keys, their persistent efforts yielded results. Messages detailing troop movements, supply shortages, strategic objectives, and even personal anxieties of Confederate commanders were gradually unraveled. This intelligence was immediately forwarded to Lincoln and his generals, providing an invaluable real-time assessment of enemy capabilities and intentions. The decryption wizards were the silent architects of Union victories, their unsung efforts directly contributing to strategic decisions that saved lives and shortened the war. Their work transformed the conflict from a blind struggle into a more informed, calculated campaign, giving the Union a profound, often invisible, edge. The efforts of Lincoln's decryption wizards were not merely academic, they had tangible, life-saving, and war-winning impacts. While it's difficult to pinpoint a single code that ended the war, the cumulative effect of intercepted intelligence was undeniably crucial, influencing pivotal battles and campaigns. One of the earliest and most impactful intelligence coups, though not solely a code-breaking effort, set a precedent: the discovery of Lee's Special Order 191 before the Battle of Antietam. While this was a physical document lost by a Confederate courier and found by Union soldiers, its contents, detailing Lee's entire battle plan, served as a stark demonstration of the immense power of knowing the enemy's intentions. It underscored Lincoln's belief in the necessity of advanced intelligence gathering. As the war progressed, the USMTC's codebreaking abilities grew. In 1863, during the Vicksburg campaign, Union cryptographers were regularly intercepting and deciphering Confederate messages. These intercepts provided General Grant with invaluable insights into the movements and supply lines of Confederate forces under John C. Pemberton. Knowing where and when Pemberton's supplies were coming, or where his reinforcements were expected, allowed Grant to make precision strikes, isolate enemy units, and ultimately secure the strategic fortress of Vicksburg, splitting the Confederacy in two. The following year, during Sherman's Atlanta campaign, intercepted Confederate telegrams again played a critical role. Union intelligence frequently knew the location and strength of Confederate General Hood's forces, allowing Sherman to outmaneuver him repeatedly. Information about Hood's dwindling supplies and morale, gleaned from decrypted messages, bolstered Sherman's resolve and informed his aggressive strategy of continuous pressure. These intelligence successes were not always dramatic. Often, they were incremental victories. Confirmation of a rumor, a warning of a planned raid, the precise location of a supply depot. But collectively, they built an undeniable strategic advantage for the Union. They allowed Union commanders to anticipate rather than react, to conserve resources, and to strike with greater confidence and accuracy. The cost of these intelligence efforts was negligible compared to the lives saved and the speed with which the war was brought to a close. The constant flow of decrypted messages provided Lincoln with a panoramic view of the battlefield, a strategic clarity that his Confederate counterparts largely lacked. It was a silent war, fought with intellect and information, but its echoes resonated profoundly on every bloody field. Beyond simply reading Confederate messages, Lincoln and his intelligence network began to explore the darker arts of deception and psychological warfare. If they could listen to the enemy, could they also influence them? The answer was a resounding yes. The Union developed sophisticated tactics to sow confusion and misinformation among Confederate ranks, often leveraging their knowledge of enemy codes and communication patterns. One subtle but effective tactic involved sending false messages across lines that they knew the Confederates were tapping. These messages, carefully crafted to appear genuine, would contain misleading information about Union troop movements, supply depots, or strategic intentions. The goal was to send Confederate forces on wild goose chases, divert their attention from actual objectives, or deplete their resources pursuing phantom threats. Another method involved intercepting genuine Confederate messages, subtly altering them, and then allowing them to continue to their destination. This was a dangerous game, requiring incredible precision and an intimate understanding of the enemy's command structure and expectations. A poorly altered message could expose the deception, but a well-executed one could cause irreparable damage, leading Confederate units into ambushes, disrupting their logistics, or creating mistrust among their commanders. Lincoln, with his keen legal mind and understanding of human nature, likely grasped the psychological impact of such tactics. He knew that doubt and confusion could be as potent as bullets. A commander who constantly suspected his intelligence, or who was unsure if the orders he received were genuine, was a commander whose effectiveness was severely compromised. The USMTC's ability to monitor Confederate communications also allowed Lincoln to gauge the psychological state of the enemy. Reports of low morale, supply shortages, or inter-command squabbles, often found in decrypted personal messages or less formal dispatches, provided valuable insights. This intelligence allowed Lincoln and his generals to tailor their strategies, knowing when to press harder, when to offer terms, or when to simply wait for the enemy to unravel from within. This advanced form of intelligence and counterintelligence was a testament to the sophistication of Lincoln's secret weapon. It wasn't just about knowing, it was about shaping the narrative, manipulating the flow of information to demoralize the enemy and accelerate their inevitable defeat. The war became not just a test of arms, but a profound battle of wits and deception. By 1864, the Union's intelligence apparatus, honed over years of conflict, was reaching its peak effectiveness. Ulysses S. Grant, now the General-in-Chief, understood and fully utilized the power of the USMTC. His campaigns, particularly the Overland Campaign against Lee and Sherman's march to the sea, were characterized by relentless pressure, coordinated movements, and a profound reliance on real-time intelligence. Grant, a pragmatist, wasn't interested in grand, speculative strategies, he wanted facts. And the USMTC delivered. From their headquarters in City Point, Virginia, Union telegraphers and cryptographers worked tirelessly, intercepting and deciphering a constant stream of Confederate communications. They provided Grant with daily, sometimes hourly, updates on Lee's troop strength, his defensive positions around Petersburg, and crucially, his diminishing supply lines. Intercepted messages revealed the desperate pleas of Confederate commanders for food, ammunition, and reinforcements, painting a clear picture of the Confederacy's unraveling strength. This intelligence allowed Grant to make informed decisions about where to apply pressure, where to feint, and where to launch decisive assaults. He knew when Lee was shifting troops from one sector to another, allowing him to exploit the resulting weaknesses. He understood the logistical nightmares plaguing the Confederate supply chain, informing his strategy of attrition. Sherman, too, benefited immensely from this intelligence synergy during his march to the sea. As he cut a swath through Georgia, destroying Confederate infrastructure and morale, the USMTC kept him informed of any organized Confederate resistance. Decrypted messages confirmed that there was little, if any, coordinated effort to stop him, giving him the confidence to push deeper into enemy territory. The intelligence wasn't always about large-scale strategic revelations. Sometimes it was granular details about enemy morale or the precise location of a small but vital Confederate detachment. But taken together, these pieces of information provided Grant and Sherman with an unparalleled understanding of the battlefield. It allowed them to wage a war of superior information, outmaneuvering and outthinking their opponents at every turn. The relentless pressure applied by Grant, informed by Lincoln's secret weapon, slowly but surely squeezed the life out of the Confederacy. Every decoded message brought the Union one step closer to victory, demonstrating that in modern warfare, knowledge was truly power, and communication, when secured and exploited, could be the ultimate weapon. As the spring of 1865 dawned, the Confederacy was on its last legs, besieged at Petersburg, its capital, Richmond, hanging by a thread. The grinding pressure of Grant's forces, combined with Sherman's relentless march, had brought the South to the brink of collapse. In these desperate final months, Lincoln's secret weapon continued to play an indispensable role, providing the Union with crucial intelligence that effectively sealed the Confederacy's fate. The USMTC's ability to intercept and decrypt Confederate communications reached its zenith. Messages from Richmond became increasingly frantic, detailing severe food shortages, rampant desertion, and the undeniable sense of impending doom pervading the Confederate high command. These intercepts gave Lincoln and Grant a precise timeline of the Confederacy's internal collapse, allowing them to anticipate Lee's final, desperate maneuvers. On April 2, 1865, Richmond finally fell. President Jefferson Davis and his cabinet fled, abandoning their burning capital. Throughout this chaotic retreat, Confederate telegraph lines were still active, and Union cryptographers were listening. They intercepted frantic dispatches between Confederate leaders, revealing their routes of escape, their attempts to rally remaining forces, and their dwindling hopes. This real-time intelligence allowed Union cavalry to pursue with precision, cutting off escape routes and denying the Confederate leadership any chance to regroup effectively. The hunt for Lee's army in the days leading up to Appomattox was heavily guided by intercepted communications. Messages from Lee's own headquarters, though increasingly sparse and desperate, still provided clues about his direction, his dwindling supplies, and his ultimate intention to try and link up with General Johnston's forces in North Carolina. Union forces, armed with this intelligence, were able to relentlessly dog Lee's retreat, preventing him from gaining any respite or finding a favorable position. The intelligence gathered from these final, desperate Confederate communications made it clear that Lee had no viable escape. The circle was closing, tightened by the invisible threads of intercepted messages. The information asymmetry was absolute. The Union knew Lee's options, or lack thereof, almost as soon as he did, if not before. This clarity removed any doubt from Grant's mind, allowing him to corner Lee at Appomattox Courthouse. The last secrets, vital to the Confederacy's survival, had been uncovered, paving the way for surrender. The code had done its work, silently and relentlessly, helping to bring about the end of the bloodiest chapter in American history. April 9, 1865. Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. The surrender of General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia to General Ulysses S. Grant marked the symbolic, if not final, end of the Civil War. While the heroism and sacrifices of soldiers on both sides rightfully fill the history books, the role of Lincoln's secret weapon, the code that had been relentlessly deciphered and exploited, deserves its place in this momentous conclusion. The intelligence gathered from intercepted Confederate communications in the preceding weeks and days had left no doubt in Grant's mind about the desperate state of Lee's army. Union cryptographers had provided a clear, undeniable picture of Lee's dwindling resources, his exhausted men, and his increasingly limited options. They knew his intended escape routes, his supply deficiencies, and the plummeting morale within his ranks. This precise, real-time intelligence allowed Grant to orchestrate the final encirclement with absolute confidence. He knew he wasn't gambling. He was executing a strategy informed by the enemy's own words. The speed with which Grant was able to react to Lee's movements, to cut off his paths, and to force him into an untenable position was a direct consequence of the USMTC's tireless work. Had the Union been blind to Lee's intentions, reliant only on scout reports and slow couriers, the pursuit might have dragged on, potentially allowing Lee to escape and prolong the war. Instead, Grant moved with decisive speed, guided by the very communications of his adversary. When Lee and Grant met at Appomattox, the terms of surrender were negotiated with a full understanding of the Confederacy's internal collapse, a collapse meticulously documented by Union intelligence. The Union knew that Lee had no cards left to play, and this knowledge allowed for a magnanimous surrender, designed to heal a fractured nation rather than further punish a broken foe. The code, the seemingly abstract world of letters and numbers, had contributed tangibly to this historic moment. It had shortened the war, saved untold lives, and allowed the Union to achieve victory not just through brute force, but through superior intellect and information. The quiet hum of the telegraph office in Washington, the intense concentration of the codebreakers, the dangerous work of the line tappers, these unseen efforts coalesced into the strategic advantage that culminated at Appomattox. It was a victory not just on the battlefield, but in the shadows, a testament to the power of a truly secret weapon. The story of Lincoln's secret weapon is, by its very nature, a tale of unsung heroes. The young men of the U.S. Military Telegraph Corps, the telegraph operators, the cryptographers, and the intelligence officers, worked in near absolute secrecy. Their triumphs were celebrated not on parade grounds, but in the hushed confines of the War Department, and their contributions were largely omitted from public record, often at their own insistence, to maintain operational security. David Homer Bates, Albert Chandler, Charles Tinker, and many others, were ordinary men who performed extraordinary deeds. They were civilians thrust into the maelstrom of war, their unique skills transforming them into vital assets. They endured long hours, immense pressure, and the constant threat of enemy action, yet they left behind few personal accounts of their clandestine work. Many of them never received medals or public recognition for their intelligence contributions. Their names do not appear prominently in the grand narratives of Civil War battles. Yet, they were instrumental in shaping the course of the conflict. They were Lincoln's most trusted eyes and ears, his direct conduit to the chaotic realities of the front lines, and the quiet architects of his strategic superiority. Their legacy, however, is profound. The USMTC established the foundational principles of modern military intelligence and signals intelligence. Their methods of interception, decryption, and secure communication laid the groundwork for future intelligence agencies, shaping how nations would gather information in every conflict to come. From the signal intelligence of World War I to the code-breaking efforts of World War II, and into the digital age, the lineage can be traced back to these pioneers. Their work demonstrated unequivocally that information superiority could be as decisive as firepower. It proved that knowing the enemy's secrets, understanding their intentions, and even manipulating their perceptions, was a legitimate and powerful means to achieve victory. Their silence, maintained for decades after the war, was a testament to their professionalism and the sensitive nature of their duties. Only through painstaking historical research have their stories slowly begun to emerge from the shadows, revealing the true depth of Lincoln's foresight and the incredible impact of his secret weapon. These were the hidden warriors who fought not with rifles, but with intellect, shaping the destiny of a nation with every deciphered message. The Civil War, often remembered for its grand battles and heroic figures, also marked a profound turning point in the history of warfare, the dawn of modern intelligence and cryptography. Lincoln's secret weapon, the systematic interception, decryption, and exploitation of enemy communications, wasn't just a wartime innovation, it was a blueprint for the future. The USMTC's pioneering efforts demonstrated that information could be a strategic asset of immense power, capable of influencing the outcome of conflicts as profoundly as any army or navy. Their work proved that mastering the unseen battles, the war behind the war, was essential for victory in the modern age. From the muddy fields of Virginia, the principles established by these unsung heroes reverberated through every subsequent conflict. The meticulous process of intercepting communications, the intellectual challenge of breaking complex ciphers, the careful analysis of intelligence, and the strategic application of that knowledge became cornerstones of military doctrine worldwide. World War I saw the rise of dedicated signals intelligence units. World War II witnessed the legendary triumphs of Bletchley Park and Arlington Hall, whose codebreakers shortened the war by years, saving millions of lives through their mastery of Enigma and JN-25. In the Cold War and beyond, organizations like the National Security Agency have continued this legacy, adapting to ever more complex cryptographic challenges posed by new technologies. Lincoln, with his uncanny foresight, understood that the telegraph was not merely a faster way to send messages, but a transformative tool that reshaped the battlefield into a vast network of information. He grasped that control of this network, both defensively and offensively, offered an unparalleled strategic advantage. His relentless pursuit of intelligence, his personal engagement with the telegraphers, and his commitment to the development of secure communications and code-breaking capabilities were revolutionary. The code that ended the Civil War was not a single, magical cipher, but the entire ecosystem of intelligence gathering, decryption, and strategic deployment. It was a testament to human ingenuity and the enduring power of knowledge in times of conflict. As we look back, it becomes clear that Abraham Lincoln's greatest secret weapon was not a new rifle or a powerful cannon, but the silent, relentless, and brilliant work of those who fought in the shadows, unraveling the secrets that ultimately helped to reunite a shattered nation. Their legacy lives on, a constant reminder that in the annals of war, the might of the mind can be as formidable as the might of the sword.